Michigan football is many things, but is their offense explosive? That's what at least one person on the team claims, and I don't agree with that. And I say that with all due respect. Locked on Big Ten starts right now.
You are Locked On Big Ten, your daily podcast on the Big Ten Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Big Ten. I'm Craig Sheeman, coming up on 40 years as a sports talk show host and play-by-play announcer. And I want to thank you for making Locked On Big Ten your first listen each and every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So we're going to talk about the explosive Wolverines, right? Plus, we'll talk some recruiting. USC loses a 5-star, and Urban Meyer loves the Buckeyes roster. Plus, we'll have our Big Ten Classics. And don't forget, Friday, tomorrow, our one-year anniversary show. We'll have some stuff for you there. We were as impressed as anybody last year with the Michigan Wolverine football team. 15-0 national champions. Can't get better than that. Very impressive. Certainly, we have a lot of questions and curiosities about the 2024 Wolverines football team, specifically on offense. And we wonder what kind of team they'll field this year. Those thoughts are very reasonable, right? I mean, after all, Jim Harbaugh, J.J. McCarthy, Blake Corum, the entire offensive line, they're all gone. They're all gone. But I, along with many others, were very surprised when Michigan's new offensive coordinator, Kirk Campbell, said that the 2024 Wolverines offense will be explosive. Explosive. You know, if this year's offense is anything like last year, and I think it will be because, after all, Sharon Moore is still there. Explosive is not the first word that comes to mind when I think of Michigan offense or Michigan football in general. Michigan's offense was the definition of bully ball. They'd blow you off the line of scrimmage. They'd knock you down. They'd run all over you. When Sharon Moore called 32 straight running plays versus Penn State, explosive was not a word that came to mind when I described Michigan that day. I think of explosive offenses, and maybe you do too, as a team that throws the ball all over the yard, a team that moves the ball 80 yards in 3 minutes. That's not Michigan football. Hasn't been, maybe ever. Roman Wilson was their best receiver last year, and, he only caught 48 balls for 789 yards. Very respectable. Nowhere near 1,000-yard rusher, something that I think helps define an explosive offense. 1,000-yard receiver. I said rusher, receiver. That's something I use to describe an offense that's explosive. But, it's not always limited to just the air attack. Let's talk about the running game as well, because an offense can be explosive with a ground game, but in reality, the only time that I would really describe Michigan as an explosive offense, maybe the ground game, if we're going to talk about that, their final game against Washington, the national championship. That's what Donovan Edwards just kept chunking the Washington defense for big gains. He had touchdowns of 46 and 41 yards. That looked explosive. That opened up a lot of eyes nationally. And, of course, he'll be the feature back. He's returning this year to the Wolverines. And maybe that's what Kirk Campbell was talking about, the offensive coordinator at Michigan. He says we'll still have that blue-collar, physical offense. That will remain the same. But he says he's got explosive players at his disposal. He says his job is to get these players the ball and then let them do their thing, their explosive thing. That's where the explosiveness comes in, according to him. But the first question that we have is, who's going to get these explosive players the football? As we sit here on the first day of summer, we have no idea who Michigan's starting quarterback is going to be. They don't really have an idea who their starting quarterback will be. For the time being, it looks like Alex Orji for now. And even if he's not the starter, he will be part of this offense this year. But he hasn't completed a pass since 2022. And that was the only pass completion, singular, of his entire career. Tight end Colston Loveland, he's really the only true starter returning to this offense. His goal is to be a 1,000-yard receiver. Great. That'd be cool. He had 649 yards last year. Campbell is big on his receivers, Samaj Morgan and Tyler Morris. He thinks they absolutely can stretch the defenses across the Big Ten, and I think they can. But a lot of people looking at Ohio State and Oregon to be at the top of the Big Ten this year, and I think it's very reasonable to think that. We've said as much here on this podcast, but we've also said, regardless of how loaded Ohio State and Oregon are this year, do not sleep on Michigan. They're going to be good. The question is, how good? That we don't know. We have some questions. And we start with this offense and we start with quarterback. But anyway, don't sleep on the Wolverines this year. There'll be a lot of new faces playing on Saturday. Most of them, though, have been in Ann Arbor for many years, kind of getting ready for their turn to lead. They've got Michigan culture and championship DNA built into them. Now, here's the exciting part. We should learn pretty soon how good this Michigan football team is. Because unlike last year, where they kind of eased into it with a fairly easy preseason, pre-Big Ten schedule, they're going to have to jump right into it. Week 2, they have a very formidable Texas Longhorns team coming into the Big House in week 2. Texas has national aspirations of their own, and they want what Michigan earned last year. And when they're very excited to come out here and are out in Ann Arbor rather, and to take on the Michigan Wolverines and take their shot at the defending national champions and get them early. This Texas team is loaded, very loaded, and they've got guys who've been playing together. Michigan's going to kind of be figuring things out with the new guys coming up into their positions. So, and that starts at quarterback too. So no quarterback questions at Texas with Quinn Ewers. Of course, Arch Manning chomping out the bit as his backup. So it's going to be an exciting day out there, week 2 early on, and get a good feel how Michigan is going to be. Michigan wins that game, look out. Maybe something special. But it's going to be tough. It's going to be really tough. So anyway, a lot of questions about Michigan. I still think they're going to ground and pound. I still think I've told you this on previous podcasts right here, just in the past couple of weeks. You can go back and check them out. I know the whole offensive line has to be replaced, but the guys coming up, they're upperclassmen. They're big, giant men ready to go. I think they're going to be fine on the ground game as soon as they iron out what the quarterback situation is going to be. And, if it is Alex Orji, and maybe it takes him a few weeks to get going, who knows? You saw the same thing with Jalen Milroe at Alabama. Michigan fans, by the time the Rose Bowl was here, Jalen Milroe looked pretty good. By week 2, though, at the beginning of the season, he didn't look good. He got benched. So I don't know. Maybe Michigan will have some sort of curve like that at quarterback, trying to figure out who it is. And then by the end of the season, they're rolling. But I don't know. That's what's exciting about this upcoming season. Anyway, Wolverines fans, I know you love your Michigan football. So I'd love to know what you think. Is explosive a word that you would use to anticipate the 2024 season and the offense for the Michigan Wolverines? We'd love to get your thoughts on that. There are many ways you can hit us up at Twitter or X at Talk Big Ten. Also, you can see our scroll on the bottom if you're watching on video, talkbig10 10.com. We take your comments there as well as on YouTube. So all that is at your disposal to stay in contact with this podcast. Hey, if you like what you see, or better yet, if you have a Big Ten friend or alum that would like this, let them know about it. You could share this. If nothing else, subscribe. Subscribe here to Locked On Big Ten. Then we're in the same loop all season long, talking about the Big Ten every single day. It's for free wherever you get your podcasts, and you get the latest episode of this podcast as soon as it becomes available each and every day if you are a subscriber. All right, USC loses a 5-star commit, and Urban Meyer absolutely loves the Buckeyes roster. He said 2 things. Well, I'll tell you what they are when we come back. All that coming up in a moment. But he is very impressed. That's next here on Locked On Big Ten. Passion, drive, and patience. That is the formula for winning championships. It's also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. And with all the parts you need at all the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. That's ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers. Want to thank you for making Locked On Big Ten your first listen each and every day, especially you everydayers out there. Meanwhile, be sure to subscribe. And of course, share, follow, and like Locked On Big Ten, your team every day. And again, don't forget, check out our website, talkbig1010.com. You can go right there and not only see and listen to all the podcasts from all of your favorite teams. We got them chronologically. We got them grouped by your favorite school. And you get yourself some merch right there. Shirts, hats, everything. T-shirts, pennants, coffee mugs, all right there. talkbig1010.com. So when former Buckeyes coach Urban Meyer speaks, Big Ten people usually listen. I know we pay attention to it. And he knows a thing or two about championship caliber rosters. Now, Urban recently said his current, this current Ohio State Buckeyes roster is ridiculously good. We concur. Between the talent that was already there and the quality of the transfers that have come in this year, look out, everybody else. He went so far as to say, I told you going into the break, that he said two things. He said that this is the best roster in the last decade in college football. But then he went on to say that maybe it's the best roster ever in college football. That's high praise from Urban Meyer. So everybody look out. He pointed out the quality at every position. He says he's never seen anything like it. And so, for the most part, we agree. Still a question mark at quarterback of Will Howard, but we'll figure that out as we go along. By the way, that other former Buckeyes coach, Jim Tressel, heard Urban's comments, and he agrees with them too. So there's a second credible opinion. Whether Ohio State has the best college football roster in the last decade remains to be seen. With the transfer portal additions, like Ole Miss running back Quinshon Judkins coming in, fantastic. And Alabama safety Caleb Downs, that's turned a few heads along the way. And as far as quarterback transfer Will Howard from Kansas State goes, again, I'm on a wait and see program with him. But these transfers are joining in an established talent like running back Travion Henderson already. What a 1-2 punch. Judkins and Henderson at running back. Of course, defensive line, JT Tuimoloau, he's there. He's coming back for another year. Fantastic. Look out, college football. Speaking of the Buckeyes, the biggest, I've said this before, I think it'll catch on, but I think the biggest game on their schedule this year might not be the Michigan game. I actually think it might be the October 12th tilt against Oregon at Autzen Stadium. It's been a tough ticket to get, by the way, for some time. And one of the major airlines out there keeps adding flights from Columbus, Ohio to Portland, Oregon. A lot of people are going to this game. It's going to be Oregon's blackout game. But I think there's going to be a pretty sizable section of fans wearing scarlet out there. Going to see some red mixing in with that black on their blackout. Some news out of Southern Cal. 5-star defensive line and USC Trojan commit Justice Terry, who had been committed to Troy since March. He's bailing. He's bailing on SoCal. He happens to be the second commit to decommit from the school in the last 2 days. Edge rusher Isaiah Gibson is the other player. Gibson was targeted by Georgia. Terry was also targeted by Georgia before committing to USC. Terry says he won't commit until early signing day in December. I got a feeling these guys might be heading over to Georgia. What do you think? Meanwhile, the Indiana Hoosiers with a mixed bag, a couple of commits, and then they lost a couple. They lost 3-star commit linebacker Travaris Daniels II and corner Chris McCorkle III. They both committed in April. I remember we talked to you about that, but they bailed this week. Now, the Hoosiers did get a commit from unranked linebacker Jamari Farmer from Mooresville, North Carolina. He had offers from Cincinnati and East Carolina. And as we mentioned last week, Bloomington South's star kicker and 5-star Bryce Taylor, he is coming to IU. He's sticking. He's going to stay. That's where he wanted to go to school. Great kicker. So anyway, that's the latest here on what has been a very busy month of June for recruiting throughout all of college football. It has been as intense as I remember. I don't remember so many guys committing and decommitting and flipping and schools flipping other guys. Man, it is cutthroat out there. Coaches can't enjoy their summer. They got to be out there recruiting these kids. Anytime we talk about recruiting, we always give a shout out to our friends at LinkedIn Jobs, because these days every new potential hire can feel like a high stakes wager for your small business. That's why LinkedIn Jobs helps find the right people for your team faster and for free. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnCollege. Terms and conditions apply. We also like to tell you about our friends at Locked On Sports Today. It is an alternative to what else is going on out there. You watch some daytime talking head pundit TV and you can't stand it because they're always yelling and screaming over each other. Again, I mean, it's not who has the most brilliant point. It's who's the loudest. You got to turn it off sometimes. Got an alternate for you here. Check out Locked On Sports Today, an alternative, I should say. A free 24/7 sports streaming channel program for you every day, bringing you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. On Thursdays, we like to look ahead to the weekend on the Big Ten Network. Again, we always tell you we are not affiliated with the Big Ten Network. We just have some of the same interests. And so on weekends, they have a lot of good classics program. You can watch some of your favorite teams from yesteryear, just like it was yesterday. And you can watch. We always pick a few things to highlight. So we'll do that for you next, right here on Locked On Big Ten. All right, let's do this. We're going to take a look at our Big Ten classics on the Big Ten Network. If you're on audio only, we will describe them to you in detail. That way you won't feel left out. But we will have it here on video on YouTube. I'll punch it up. We'll go full screen with it. Here is a look at some of the highlights on the Big Ten Network and our Big Ten classics that we want to pay attention to. Friday, we always start off with Friday. Friday, the 21st. Got a couple of things late. It's a lot of lacrosse all day. So we've highlighted 8 o'clock Eastern time, Big Ten men's lacrosse, the Big Ten championship. That is Michigan versus Penn State. And then at 10:30, the airing of the Big Ten women's lacrosse Big Ten championship, Northwestern versus Penn State. All right, so let's move to Saturday now. Saturday the 22nd. We'll pick up the action here at 2 o'clock Eastern time. Ohio State Basketball Classic. This is the women. Iowa at Ohio State. We featured this one before. It was January just this year. Cody McMahon, 33 points, 12 rebounds, leading the 18th ranked Buckeyes to a 192 overtime victory over Caitlin Clark and the second ranked Hawkeyes. That was the one where everybody stormed the court. Caitlin got knocked down. You remember that? That's the game. That's the game we're talking about here. 2 o'clock. Let's fast forward to 5:30. We got a Nebraska Basketball Classic for women's basketball, again against the Iowa Hawkeyes. Anytime Caitlin Clark is involved, there's a lot of attention. Jazz Shelley, 23 points, and the Cornhuskers defeated Caitlin Clark and the second-ranked Hawkeyes, 82-79. Again, the court was stormed on this game that took place in February. Always a big deal if you beat Caitlin Clark. 6:30, Big Ten basketball and 60, more women's basketball. Michigan at Ohio State. Michigan, Ohio State, always big no matter what the sport is. But this is from the end of February where J.C. Sheldon scored 22 points and Cody McMahon added 18 to help the second-ranked Buckeyes beat the Wolverines 67-51 and win the Big Ten regular season title. Go ahead and relive some of those memories as well. Then at 9 o'clock, another Iowa basketball classic, a lot of women's basketball on Saturday all day long. The NCAA tournament, Women's Elite Eight. That was Iowa versus LSU. That was Caitlin Clark, 41 points. Angel Reese, the rivalry, Kate Martin added 21 to lead the top-seeded Hawkeyes to a 94-87 victory over the third-seeded Tigers to advance to their second straight Final Four. And at 10 o'clock Eastern time, more Iowa basketball, the Big Ten Women's Championship. Iowa versus Nebraska. That in the tournament, the Big Ten tournament in March. Caitlin Clark had 34 in that one. Hannah Stolke had 25 in the second-seeded Hawkeyes. Defeated fifth-seeded Nebraska 94-89 in overtime to win their third straight Big Ten championship. All right, let us mosey over and change the screen. Let's take a look at Sunday's action. 3 things we pulled for you here you might find interesting. We're picking up at 1 o'clock Eastern, and it's one of their Big Ten story features. Nebraska volleyball in general. I mean, great program. Take a look back at the storied history of Nebraska volleyball, and you can hear from Coach John Cook, Coach Terry Petit, and former players and fans on what volleyball means to the state of Nebraska. I think you got a pretty good idea what volleyball meant to the state of Nebraska in August of last year when they go behind the scenes of that Cornhuskers match at Memorial Stadium where they played an outdoor volleyball match in the football stadium, which was packed and it set a world record for a crowd for a volleyball game. At 3 o'clock Eastern, the Big Trip. This is a piece of behind the scenes of the Hawkeyes women's basketball team. Took a tour of Croatia. Sometimes these schools will do team building trips every few years. And the Hawkeyes women's basketball team went to Croatia. And in the off season, I think was this 2 years ago or 1 year ago, they competed in their last local game there. And then they tour the area and go kayaking on the Adriatic Sea. A lot of interesting, fun behind the scenes stuff. And then a similar program at 8:30, the Big Trip, the 1985 Indiana basketball team. Coach Bob Knight taking his team around the world in the summer of 85. You hear from members of the team and they reminisce about their special trip. And this was interesting because this was a transition time for the Hoosiers. You know, I'm sure you've all read John Feinstein's book, The Season on the Brink. About this time period, but this really set up the team. These players will tell you this trip brought this team together. This was the core of the team that eventually came about and won the 86-87 national championship. Keith Smart hit the game-winning shot against Syracuse in the national championship game. So go behind the scenes that. More team building there. Anyway, that's what's coming up this weekend. Big Ten Classics on the Big Ten Network. So I hope you enjoy that. It's hot out throughout most of the country. Cool off and check this out. Sit in the air condition and watch some Big Ten memories from back in the day. All right. So quick note, tomorrow is our 1-year anniversary podcast here on Locked On Big Ten. Locked On Big Ten had existed for a little while. I took it over as the host 1 year ago, our first episode. We're going to reminisce a little bit and talk about that. There are many ways for you to interact with this podcast and me as well. Don't forget Twitter at X at Talk Big Ten number 10. Don't forget our website. Again, talkbig10number10.com. You see the scroll on the bottom. Don't forget to go there for your favorite merchandise from your favorite school right there at your fingertips at talkbig10number10.com. While you're there, we have all of our podcast lists right there as well. Don't forget comments on YouTube, and you can always hit us up there. Be sure, no matter what you do, to subscribe. Subscribe and follow this podcast right now on your favorite podcast app, and you'll get the latest episode of Locked On Big Ten as soon as it becomes available each and every day. Audio versions are out at 4 a.m. Eastern. Video versions are out on YouTube at 6 a.m. Eastern every single day. While you're there, catch a few more episodes of Locked On Big Ten. Let us know what you think and share with your friends. I know you've got a Big Ten friend or an alum family member. Let them know we're out here every day delivering for the Big Ten. When you're done with us, check out our friends at Locked On Sports Today, the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube as well. Again, go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. All right, that's a wrap on our first year. Year number 2 begins tomorrow. We'll have all that on the first day of summer. We'll talk about it, among other things, keeping our eye on all the football and other news going on around the Big Ten. Thanks for joining us today. Can't wait to visit again tomorrow. I'm Craig Sheeman for Locked On Big Ten. See you next time.